Hey, my name is David, and I'm here to talk a bit about the exciting world of banking and finance. It's interesting hearing, some of the talks about retail and healthcare and other spaces, and there's really a lot of similarities. And one thing actually that I find particularly interesting is that finance and fintech, from a consumerism standpoint, it's actually on both sides of the equation, right? A lot of these services that we talked about, you're not going to go anywhere if you can't make a payment, right? You can't have an online shop or pay your doctors or insurance without the payments and without the ability to hold money and all that. And so, very similarly, it's all being driven really by the consumer, right? Think about really tech as a whole and that whole motto of kind of move fast and break things. And finance is it's a space where that doesn't really work out so well for the consumer. Because at the end of the day, I want to know that my money is safe, my money is secure, that I can trust that things are going to work. And so, that first wave of fintech we've seen actually really lagging that initial tech, but we're starting to really see it nowadays, which is consumers think of that Uber experience. They think about how other apps or other things that they do in their life, they're seamless. Everything is integrated. It works quickly. It works well. And finance still feels a little slow and clunky. And so, there is that push to innovate and to be faster, to have that instant payment, to reduce the friction, to make those interactions more valuable, while still maintaining, of course, the security. So, I think it happens really on both sides of the equation. So the consumers want that from the apps they use. At the same time, we talked about the retail industry and, what a merchant wants. And they love, especially from a consumer standpoint, they love that frictionless experience, because if you're a merchant and you're selling something, at the end of the day, I really don't want that last second opportunity for you to double check. Do I really need this? Do I really want this? Can I find a lower cost alternative? No, just one click and you're done, right? And so, there was a lot of talk, I'd say probably 3 to 5 years ago in fintech. And, we also talked disruption, that all these new startups, big tech companies were going to eat the lunch of banks and others. But we really haven't seen that materialize, especially here in Canada. And so I think there's a couple of things, that we've seen so far. And, one, Canadians actually are generally pretty well served. I think, if you have a bank, you probably have an app, and 99% of people have a bank account. I'd like to think we do a reasonably good job of giving you some capabilities in your banking apps. And we also, we have probably one of the first to have a real-time person-to-person payment capability with email money transfer. And so that's something, I think I finally got my mom to use it last year, but the e-transfers are rolling in now. So But if we look around the world, I think there's a lot of interesting innovation that's happened, and some success in this first wave of fintech. A couple of things we see: that enhanced value propositions. So, a couple of names I'll throw out: TransferWise, international money movement. Really good experience, low cost. Drop is a local fintech company. They kind of give you rewards on top of your daily spending and your credit card rewards. One of the most valuable fintech companies is Stripe, and really what they've done is they've made it simple. And so I don't know if maybe Well.ca uses Stripe, perhaps not. But their real claim to fame is that it only takes 7 lines of code for the merchant to integrate that and to be able to accept online payments. They're actually not cheaper than your bank or your typical merchant acquirer, but for the business it makes it easy, and for them, again, time is money. And then you've seen a lot of others really get close to their customers, right? At the end of the day, if you go where your customers want to go, your business is going to do pretty well. And so there's a challenger bank in the UK called Manzo. They really engage closely with their community to figure out what are the features that people actually want to have in that app. But like I said, the disruption really hasn't happened yet. But I think we're really on the cusp of this second wave of fintech. And we often talk internally about the accelerating pace of change, and I think every industry is feeling it right now. But particularly in finance, we've already got a lot of digital capabilities out there in the market. And I think there's two things that you're seeing right now here, especially in Canada. One is, regulators and the role that they're playing in the ecosystem. And then the second is data. I mean, really talking about not just data, the amounts of data, as well as machine learning and AI and those capabilities, what that can enable. And so, one of the things that I look to around the world is what's happening in China. And so, a lot of people talk about this now. At conferences, you probably can't go to a finance conference anyway and hear talk about Alipay and WeChat. But these are fundamentally financial platforms that have actually morphed into what they call a lifestyle platform. And so they're no longer just helping you do a transaction, and they are, it's a QR code-based payment. So one person holds up a code, the other person captures it with their phone's camera. But they actually let you do pretty much anything in your life. You can store money with them, you can buy things in store, you can buy things online, you can invest, you can order your taxi, you can buy a plane ticket, you can buy a train ticket, you can pretty much do it all. And they've created these ecosystems around that personalization from having access to all that data. And so some of the use cases that we've seen out of there, for example, from WeChat and Tencent, they're looking at the behavioral data that they collect from their chat app, right? So WeChat, it has like 1 billion users, and they're using the data there to actually decide whether or not they want to give you a loan. And in fact, they can do that in real time and have you pre-approved already for that. So I don't think we're yet at the spot where this model makes sense, or that the Canadian, American, or European consumer is necessarily there to embrace this. But I think we're starting to get at that tipping point where I think we heard it again in the retail or in the healthcare. It's no longer about transactions; it's about experiences, right? It's about extending what you're doing into what the person is actually trying to do, right? No one goes and says, "I want to make a payment." Someone goes into a store to buy something, and the payment's there to facilitate. Now, especially as we look at how data proliferates around, we always have to look at the other side of the equation, which is especially in finance, again, like I said, we don't want to move fast and break things. What are those unforeseen consequences? And so, as we go into this world, how do we protect our individual privacy? How do we ensure that we get fair value for our data? There was a Wall Street Journal article back in June entitled, "Why is Free is Too High a Price to Pay?" And they were talking about Facebook and the fact that right now, their average revenue per user, I think in 2018, topped $100. It's a free service, but yet they are monetizing you to the tune of $100, and that's for their North American users. And then in Canada, you think about where consumer sentiment is. Last November, I think it was, when StatsCan said they were going to collect the banking information of 500,000 individuals, and there was a quite public backlash against that, and it didn't go through. And the last thing I would just call out is, there's another discussion right now around Amazon and how they are using the data on consumers and the data that they have to actually feature their products higher. And so, when you think about this world of ecosystems and platforms, I think it's really important to ensure that privacy and trust is number one, because at the end of the day, you need to be able to trust, and your interests as a consumer are what matter the most. And I think the businesses that focus on that and focus, in the case of finance, on your financial health, will be the ones that win out in the long run.